OPP kills First Nations man in Kenora. Timmins safe injection site is closing due to lack of government funding. Karima Mani is going to jail for fraudulently claiming her twin daughters were Inuit. 3 Northvolt employees in Swedish plant mysteriously die. And a look at Iran's presidential election. Good morning. It's Friday, June 28th. I'm Nora. Here are your headlines. Now, I just finished watching the American debate and I feel like my brain has leaked out of my pores. And so if something in today's episode makes no sense, blame Biden and Trump and Dana Bash and Jake Tapper and the decline of the American empire. Okay, first, we start in Kenora, where the Ontario Provincial Police has shot and killed Bruce Frog at a trailer park on Tuesday. Frog was Indigenous. He was 57 years old, reports Willow Fiddler for the Globe and Mail. The Special Investigations Unit claims that Frog had set fire to a building. When police arrived, they, quote, discovered a man with knives, unquote, which, if you are not white in Canada, means that you might receive a death sentence from the attending officers. Video of the encounter shows that the man, who isn't explicitly identified in the article as Frog, as being in mental distress. Frog was the son of Simon Frog, former chief of Wawakapuan. Frog's sister-in-law, Noreen Meekus Frog, said this, quote, he was a person who loved the land, and he always stayed in the community. He was always out hunting. He always said, I'll never leave Wawakapuan. It's my home, because he would rather be on the land than out in the urban areas, unquote. The park where the OPP killed Frog, called Anishinaabe Park, has a long history as a location for ceremonies and where First Nations people from Lake of the Woods would gather. 50 years ago, Fiddler reports that activists involved with the Ojibwe Warrior Society and the American Indian movement occupied the land during a youth conference. Over the course of that summer, there was a standoff between the activists and police. They were protesting the Department of Indian Affairs and their policies. Next, we'll stay in Northern Ontario but head east to Timmins, where that city's only supervised injection site is set to close. Aya Dufour for CBC is reporting that the decision to stop the service is due to a lack of funding from the Ontario government. The site will remain open to offer some services like equipment, counselling and withdrawal management, but many people are sounding the alarm that closing the safe injection site will lead to people dying. There has never been a fatal overdose at the site. There are only 3 spots for people to use drugs safely, though, which has pushed many people into the streets to use in alleyways or on people's properties. Rather than expanding the service, though, the decision was made to just end the safe injection site portion of the service and exacerbate the public nuisance problems that already exist. The location is in the neighborhood where my father grew up, where at one point the neighborhood was full of people who worked in the mines, in housing that was built rapidly that mostly kept out the cold, where people who worked for low wages could still raise a family off of those wages. Now, housing is too expensive, and Timmins has one of the highest rates of overdose in all of Canada, including in Western Canada. Now, in the news clip for The National that's embedded in the article, it's very obvious that the opponents to the site are all white and the users of the site are all Indigenous. Now, I don't mean all of the users and all of the opponents, but in the video, that's the case. And that's what this really boils down to. Sonia Beeman, a local business owner, told The National that she didn't understand why these people even wanted to live, given how terrible their lives are. That kind of reasoning exposes the deep bigotry that is driving so much of the campaign to get rid of safe injection sites all over Canada, and makes me, frankly, want to throw a brick through her storefront. They'd be better off dead, eh, Sonia? For who? For you? Think about that for a minute. If cities in Canada want to help people who are experiencing addiction, you cannot close services from them. That will make them die. And so at least be honest with what you are saying when you want these services to be defunded and for these people to be pushed out even further to the margins. Next, Karima Mani will serve 3 years in a federal prison. Mani pretended that her daughters were Inuit, and together the three of them scammed more than $158,000 through scholarships and other grants for Indigenous students. Emma Tranter from CBC reports that Mani enrolled her daughters as Inuit in 2016. She said that they were born to Kitty Noah, a woman who was no longer alive at the time. Kitty's son Noah said he was pleased with the verdict. Manji's daughters, who ought to have reasonably known that the enrollment as Inuit was bogus, have not been criminally charged, even though they have benefited the most from the status. Next, the Narwhal has a bombshell investigation into how TC Energy leveraged its connections with the provincial NDP to water down that province's environmental policies. The report by Matt Timmins and Mike D'Souza is the kind of excellent reporting that we've all come to expect from the Narwhal. The two got their hands on a recording where Liam Ilifi is heard saying that TC Energy had been allowed to write, quote, entire briefing notes for ministers and premiers and prime ministers, unquote. Sometimes, Ilifi says, bureaucrats just want them to do this kind of thing because they're too busy. Ilifi resigned from TC Energy during the investigation and knew that he was under investigation. David Eby's office, of course, denied that TC Energy's tactics had any impact on them. They said that Ilifi's comments were baseless. But the government has ordered a review by the lobbying registrar into things that Ilifi's heard saying that they were able to achieve. Ilifi worked for the NDP under John Horgan in various ministries and communications, and he was not listed as a former government staffer in his lobbyist registry file. TC Energy owns Coastal GasLink, the project that the Wet'suwet'en traditional leadership has fiercely opposed since construction began. Next to international news and first to news from Sweden. 3 workers have been found dead in their homes who work for the company Northvolt. Northvolt, you might remember, is one of the EV battery plants that has been lured to Canada by billions of dollars. The first death happened in January. A 33-year-old technician who was a surface worker at a new factory being built was found dead in his bed. Then, at the end of February, a 19-year-old was found dead in his sleep. Police investigated both deaths and ruled out that they had anything to do with one another or their workplace. But then a third worker was found dead, this time 59 years old, and again in his home. Northvolt says that it's just a tragic coincidence, though police have not ruled out that their deaths might be caused by a toxic substance that they've been exposed to. Northvolt has said that that's not possible. Service technician work has been suspended at the site in the wake of the third death. You will remember that the Northvolt facility construction in Quebec has been highly controversial. This report came from the Journal de Québec. Local residents have protested its construction, and there has been even acts of sabotage there. And finally, to Iran, where 2 candidates have just dropped out of the presidential race. The mayor of Tehran, Alireza Zakani, announced yesterday that he was quitting the race on Twitter. The day earlier, Amir Hossein Khazizadeh Hashemi dropped out too. Al Jazeera reports that he encouraged others to drop out as well, quote, so that the front of the revolution will be strengthened, unquote. Hashemi came in last place in the 2021 election, though served as a vice president to former President Ibrahim Raisi. You will remember that Raisi died in a helicopter crash in May. The Conservatives are divided in this race, and so the comments about the front of the revolution are referring to the conservative movement in Iran. Saeed Jalili and Mohammad Bagar Gabilaf are in a race to try and lead the conservative bloc. Both are the front runners. Gabilaf used to command the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Air Force. He was also the mayor of Tehran. And remember how we just declared that group a terrorist organization? Man, won't that be awkward if he becomes the next president of Iran? I guess, except Canada hates Iran, so I guess maybe who cares? Jalili is Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's representative to Iran's National Security Council. He ran in 2021 for president but withdrew, allowing Raisi to run almost unchallenged, reports Al Jazeera. But there is one candidate in the race who isn't in the conservative bloc, and his name is Masoud Pezeshkian, who is the only one running as a reformist. The cardiac surgeon is associated with former President Hassan Rouhani, who was, quote-unquote, relatively moderate. Pezeshkian could win if people came out to vote. Those are your headlines for Friday, June 28th. I'm Nora. That's right. It's Friday. It's Friday, and it's a long weekend. As I said last week, I'm in the long weekend gauntlet that Quebecers enjoy every June and July. For everyone else, this will be a nice long weekend introduction to summer. I know that kids finished school yesterday in many parts of Canada. So congratulations if you have children that just finished a year of school. I hope that it went well for them. And for everybody else, okay, and you included, enjoy the long weekend. Happy Canada Day, as we are forced to say by the CRTC. I'm kidding. No, we're not. Whatever you do this weekend, enjoy it. And if you're a sucker moving in the province of Quebec, I hope that it doesn't rain on your couch and your bed and your belongings. I will talk to you on Tuesday because I will take the long weekend off, as is my right. And I hope that you also get that right too. You are listening to this podcast at sandynora.com, on the Real News Network podcast feed, and anywhere you get your podcasts. I'll talk to you on Tuesday.